Welcome, everybody. Joe Quill's here with you tonight, and Brian's here as well. And I noticed something a little bit interesting with me because I have the stream manager up that I use to stream here while I'm using the Restream.io program right now, and I noticed that, and I'm putting the Brian's stuff here right now. What Brian is probably seeing right now is totally different from what I'm seeing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It just threw me for a little loop when I started the show tonight. Because I was sitting here and, I'm doing what I have to do. I'm also watching the stream for FAM Commish LB. He's playing out of the park baseball right now. It's they are in the 11th inning of Game 4 of the 2032 EMLB World Series. Little upset with how things have gone because my Phillies got eliminated. I mean, even with an 111 win team, they can't get to the World fucking Series. But anyways, yeah, I watch it for entertainment, get my drops for out of the park baseball, whatever. But it is what it is. But yeah, so I'm going back to what I was saying here. Basically, what I see is, and first of all, I see that I need to change colors because that color is specific for the Eagles, and the Eagles lost, as we all know. Got some breaking news with that as well with the Eagles. So the reason why I've kept that let's go thing on there for like 3 minutes now is because I noticed when I put this up, because, I like to tell you guys, the title of the show, even though, because some people just do not want to use the alerts. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine. I can't. But even with that, the green background with the white lettering comes up on my screen as one bar, the entire window, the video window, in that green background. Now, what Brian sees and what I see on the stream manager is something totally different. So, not complaining. It's just, oh, okay. So, nothing major, just, something that threw me into a loop here, which kind of what happened earlier today down in South Philly because Kevin Patullo is no longer the offensive coordinator. If I had something better, I would have played that. But, I was a lazy shit today, didn't do anything. So, but yeah, so Kevin Patullo's gone. Mike Tomlin stepped down. Kyle Tucker got a huge offer from the Mets within the last couple of days. I think it was earlier today, but interesting stuff there. And I'm also going to share with you a crazy stat that Sean McVay holds right now. If they win this weekend against the Chicago Bears, that streak will be broken. But I will tell you why when we get to that in a little bit. But, just some crazy stuff here. So, so the screen threw me off a little bit. No big deal. I can get rid of this now, and we can talk sports. So, first of all, I don't think Brendan's watching because he says hello right away when he's on here. And I'm trying to get rid of the, okay. So Brendan's not on here right now, I don't think. Axe Gamer Girl is not on here right now, I don't think. But I just went on record for the sake of I didn't totally miss it. When the show ended, because I had so many different tabs and windows open and all that stuff, I realized that the reason why Brendan joined so late, because he usually joins like early in the show, it's almost like he's saying, "Hey, I'm streaming. I want you to join. I want you to raid to me. And there's whatever. But because I don't have the alerts that come up on the screen, and it's probably something I'm going to have to do. But so Axe Gamer Girl followed me yesterday. Brendan raided me yesterday, and I whiffed. It happens, but but the thing is, with the way that my setup is right now, yeah, I couldn't miss it if you see flashing on the screen, so and so has subscribed or followed or whatever. So, and conversation I had last week was always make sure you're following chat and make sure you're always doing this and make sure you're always doing that. Well, I dropped the ball. And like what people say about me,
he's an asshole.
I can't help it. But so I do apologize, and that isn't something I do that often. And and depending on the situation, like for example, we had gifted subs a month or two ago, and I'm not gonna lie, I think sometimes when somebody who talks as much as I do during a show and goes speechless, I think that speaks volumes. Because you know how they say a picture's worth 1,000 words? The fact that you got me to shut up like that, that does a lot of things. So, but yeah, so I do appreciate Axe Gamer Girl for following me last night, Brendan for rating me last night, and apologies for not recognizing you right away. And and the thing is, you can always watch this after the fact as well, but you should follow or subscribe. That should be the most important thing, following and subscribing at twitch.tv/JoeQuills. But you should be doing that. And also make sure you get those alerts, because even if you watch on YouTube, X, Facebook, you'll get that alert if you follow me or subscribe to me on Twitch. Those other programs don't give you the alerts. At least I don't think like Twitch does. So even if you're watching on one of those other platforms, come on over to the dark side. We got cookies. So, but let's have some fun here today, and let's talk some sports and whatever the hell comes up, and all that fun stuff. So, but I've sat here today and let me get out of there. So, so I sat here today. I was looking at a couple of different things, and well, first of all, I did say last night I was going to have some. I was going to have some therapy today, going up the parks or whatever. And I told Mike to repeat after me, yeah, right. Kind of like how my parents, when I would say like 20, 25, 30 years ago, oh, I'm good, 35 even. Oh, I'm going to get up early. I'm going to do this. And they would say, yeah, right. And most of the time I wouldn't because, but yeah, first of all, somebody was ringing somebody's doorbell. Not mine, thankfully. I don't know which one. Don't care. I think I have an idea. Don't care. You do your thing. I do mine. 4:45 in the morning, I could hear somebody hitting the doorbell. Either I don't think anybody's across the hall yet, which is weird because the one on the other side of the steps that where I'm facing, um, that apartment's got filled up, but this one hasn't for some reason. But actually with a corner apartment like this, you have a little bit more room in at least the bedroom is huge. So, you can have
two chicks at the same time, man.
So, but yeah, so somebody rang the doorbell, and the only reason why I knew it was 4:45 a.m. is because when I wake up like I do early in the morning, before I want to get up, I always ask, "Hey Google, what time is it?"
9:20 p.m.
There you go. So I ended up hearing that. I'm like, I'm going back to bed. I'm going back to sleep. So I just put my head back on the pillow, boom, and out I was. So, but it's just some weird stuff that happened, and I didn't wake up till 11. Oops. So therapy will probably have to wait till tomorrow, or maybe Thursday, because tomorrow I might have to hang around here because they're going to be testing the fire alarm somewhere, and thankfully, don't have to worry about being on the phone taking calls, because that's the most annoying thing is because you're trying to mute yourself and you miss the button or something like that. But just some things that are going on in my little world right now. So, but I was sitting here today, and this was the second news flash that came, and kind of like when this used to be the Philly Guy Speaks years ago. I used to work from the Philly news outward, or if I started on the outside, I'd work my way inward. Well, in that classical sense, tonight, we're going from the inside out. We're going to start in Philadelphia, and that is Kevin Patullo is no longer the Eagles' offensive coordinator. Why is he no longer the offensive coordinator? Don, can you tell me?
They don't know what the fuck they're doing.
That's right. He didn't know what he was doing. At least it seemed that way. So Patullo is gone. Well, they want to try to retain him in another position. Good luck with that. But here was the statement that was released today, and I shared it on my Facebook. And if you're friends with me on Facebook, just to let you know, I share a lot of sports shit on there because guess what? I do it so that I can share stuff if I need to, like right now. And this is not coming up the way I wanted. I don't know. It's because I created new channels and everything. This ain't going the way I wanted it to. But anyways, Nick Sirianni said today, yes, The SIRI did not go off on my iPhone or iPad. He says, I have decided to make a change at offensive coordinator. I met with Kevin today to discuss the difficult decision. As he is a great coach who has my utmost respect, he has been integral to this team's success over the last 5 years, not only to the on-field product, but behind the scenes as a valued leader for our players and organization. I have no doubt he will continue to have a successful coaching career. Ultimately, when we fall short of our goals, that responsibility lies on my shoulders, especially because Nick Sirianni is a CEO head coach. So my thoughts on this. First of all, thank God. Hallelujah, holy shit, pass the Tylenol. But also, I mean, we can blame injuries. And Adam Schefter said Sirianni's open for Patullo to, on his staff, do a different role. Find a different role for him on the team.
Which app do you want to open?
I set off my phone. Let me see here. Where is it? Okay. So my phone went off. I have two phones, but yeah. But the thing is, I've said this numerous times over the course of the year, and more so towards the end of the year, the last half of the year. We can say it was Jalen Hurts. We can say it was Patullo. It was everybody on the offensive side of the ball. It wasn't just one person. Patullo will get blamed because he's calling the plays. Jalen Hurts will get the blame because he's the one that's supposed to execute the plays as the leader of the offense on the field. Nick Sirianni gets blamed because he's the CEO. And you have other people that get blamed as well. But, there were injuries to the offensive line. Lane Johnson missed the final 5-6 games, however many it was. Landon Dickerson missed games, or even if he didn't miss games, Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens never appeared to full health. So you can say the offensive line, that was an issue. You could say everybody's a year older. They didn't have the full rest after the Super Bowl because, oh, by the way, 3 to 4 weeks after the Super Bowl, that's when the new football operating year begins. But there was a sharp decline. Part of it can be blamed on Patullo. Some of it can be blamed on injury. Some could be blamed on Hurts. Some could blame it on the fact that everybody's a year older and the whole Father Time thing. But scoring went from 27.2, ranked 7th, to 22.3, 19th in points per game this year. Offensive efficiency dropped from 4th to 19th. And the rushing attack plummeted from 179 points a game, which was 2nd, to 116.9, which is 18th. Now, I think it's a little bit of everything. But the one thing I will say, and I saw this, and I don't know if I saved it. Oh, I did share. Good. So I can share this one with you. One moment. This is from Zach Berman, Z-Berm on X. And I had to play around with this tomorrow. The last 3 Eagles OCs that were external hires became head coaches. The last 3 Eagles offensive coordinators are closest to it in title who were internal hires were dismissed. Very interesting. So I guess you'd go with an outside hire. But of course, you're going to have some interesting candidates out there. You know, Mike McDaniel, who I would like to see, even though I'm afraid to see what he'd do if he ended up on Kensington Avenue, because that one meme I had, it's like when he first got signed, he was all clean cut and everything, looked like a Best Buy assistant. When his last picture at one of his last press conferences, he looked like he was a drug kingpin in Miami, as they said on there. But yeah, it's really something. Mike says KP was the QB coach. It says here that he was the passing game coordinator. Let me just confirm that here. Let me find it here because I know I highlighted it. He was promoted from pass game coordinator and associate head coach this offseason to replace Kellen Moore. At least that's according to ESPN. But we all know all articles can be wrong. Because, we can find scoring errors and shit like that all the time. But yeah, it's but Kenny Pickett, Super Bowl winning quarterback Kenny Pickett, by the way, Pittsburgh, do you miss him? I say that in sarcasm, by the way. Kenny Pickett described Patullo as the team's unsung hero, noting they spearheaded the 2-minute offense and was key in shaping the game plan behind the scenes each week. So he was grooming for this position. Now, the one thing I will say, and this happens more with head coaches than you see with offensive coordinators like this. You do see coaches that get to a certain point and they reach their ceiling. Maybe OC is too big of a job for him. Now, there were rumors, how true I don't know, that the Giants wanted to talk to him. Hell, we'd send him up there to the Meadowlands and tell him to keep him. But we're not hiring. No, just keep him anyway. It's kind of like giving your family leftovers at the end of the night. Here, take it. I have plenty of it. No, you're taking more. Take it with you. That's what the Eagles would do with Kevin Patullo if they had a chance, because he's not, even though you look online, oh, he's fired. right now, it looks like that he is been reassigned. What that will be, I don't know. But it could be eventually that it's the equivalent of a firing, where it will turn into a mutual decision, because Nick Sirianni said, I got to take you off of offensive coordinator. Otherwise, I'm out there with you on the unemployment line. That could be the case as well. You could see that very easily. But, because I didn't find somebody's post quick enough. By the time you get to a certain point, you get to the point where other news is taken over. So what I would have done for sarcasm, and also to get some likes and all that to my X account at Joe Quills. And here's the thing. It's probably still there, but you probably have to dig for it. When Bryan Danielson was Daniel Bryan in WWE, there is a GIF on there where he goes, yes, yes, yes. And I would have that all the time. Now, the only problem is a lot of GIFs disappear. Like, for example, there used to be a Danny DeVito middle finger one that they don't have on there anymore. At least I don't think so. And if they do, the middle finger's blurred out. Because, we're, even though X leans to the right and the whole thing with freedom of speech, how they define freedom of speech is different and all that, but that's political and we're not going to go any further. You got to think that Kevin Patullo can't stay in this organization after getting demoted, right? Even though that's his boy, Nick Sirianni can't have him lurking in the weeds. You can't have another situation like what Chip Kelly did to Howie Roseman, right? You can't do it. I mean, Howie Roseman was still technically the general manager. It was just that he was managing pencils and pens and office equipment and, all that stuff and not actually doing football moves. You would think Kevin Patullo would be like, well, I'm going to go elsewhere because I know I'm good enough to be an offensive coordinator. And sometimes ego gets the best of you. And the next thing you know, you're completely out of football. You're bagging groceries. But I don't know about you, but I can't see Kevin Patullo staying in Philly next year, even as the water boy. You take a demotion like this, you basically got to say, I'm going. If you're going to take a demotion, you go to another team and take that demotion to prove yourself that you can be an OC by doing some of this other work. But I don't see him staying around. But like I said, everybody's to blame, I should say. You had injuries on the offensive line, which we never really talked about, but we should have. Everybody's a year older. Did Jalen Hurts lose a step? All this other stuff. so many different things that happen along the way. You know, AJ Brown trying to do his TO impression times 20. The only thing he didn't do is do sit-ups in the driveway. But you know, but he's gone. Now he starts searching for an offensive coordinator. It'll be the 7th offensive coordinator that Jalen Hurts has had in 7 years. And that amazing fact that I shared with you guys, the last 3 external hires became head coaches. Steichen, Kellen Moore, and I forget the other one. The last 3 in-house ones, Brian Johnson, I think Brian Johnson, Kevin Patullo, and I'm missing one as well. They were dismissed. They were internal hires. So, be interesting to see. I think if Jeffrey Lurie is smart, Howie Roseman's smart, Nick Sirianni's smart, you hire somebody from outside the organization. You got Mike McDaniel out there, Brian Daboll out there, who's much better as an offensive coordinator, so you would think. Kevin Stefanski, and by the way, Howie, that's a St. Joe's Prep alum. I know you said to Kenny Pickett last year, you know, we haven't picked anybody from the prep yet. Well, there's an opportunity to get your annual St. Joe's Prep alum, but we'll see what happens with all that. And you know, maybe we needed to sacrifice a wild card playoff game at home to get rid of this doofus. And hallelujah, holy shit, it happened. So, but that wasn't the biggest news of the day. And I think this news broke before Kevin Patullo. Yeah, because this article, the Kevin Patullo article, came out around 3:30. This came out about 1:30. Mike Tomlin steps down as the Steelers coach after 19 years. And that keeps the Steelers' streak alive that they have not fired a coach since 1968 when they hired some guy to bring in Chuck Noll. He coached for 20-some years, handed off to Bill Cowher. He finally won a Super Bowl and left, and then Mike Tomlin took over. So 19 years, never had a losing season. Now, there's only one guy. There's only one guy, one coach, who's had more consecutive seasons at 500 or better. We'll see if you know who that is. Yep, on his own. So we'll see what happens. So now I wouldn't be surprised because Mike Tomlin has been in the league for 19 years. And he was still winning in the regular season, but tied Marvin Lewis's record of 7 straight losses. I wouldn't be surprised if the Pittsburgh front office and ownership said, I think it's time. We can say it's a mutual thing, or you walk away, or we're going to fire you. Which would it be? At least that's how I guess. And, you know, I'm probably way off, and it won't be the first time today I'm off. No, Vince Lombardi, no. I don't even think Vince Lombardi I don't think Vince Lombardi coached 19 years. But the answer is definitely not Vince Lombardi. Yeah, Vince Lombardi only coached 10 years. Ding, 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 ding. Mike got it. Tom Landry, 21 seasons from 1965 to 1985. Even before they were classified as America's team. And how ironic is it that I'm talking about Tom Landry being the only guy with more 500 seasons or better, and NFL Films wanted to bestow upon the Pittsburgh Steelers as America's team. They said, no, we don't want that title. Where's your Cupid doll? Damn it. Hold on. Mike gets to look at this picture. I heart massage, or I love massage on North 9th Street in Chinatown. Congratulations, Mike. You get to look at that picture. Let me see here. There you go. I love massage. But anyways, so 19 years, never had a losing season. So Tomlin said in a statement he decided to step down after much thought and reflection. Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh, I guarantee you if Chuck Noll didn't win 4 Super Bowls, Bill Cowher didn't win one, and he didn't win one, I guarantee you he would have been gone long before the 19th season this year. But because they had a tradition of winning that started in the early 70s, they're going, because they have a winning tradition. He got to the playoffs numerous times. He got to the AFC Championship game numerous times. At least I think so. He won that one Super Bowl. He lost the Super Bowl. Ironically, with against the quarterback who was his quarterback this year. Because if you remember, they lost to the Green Bay Packers in Jerry World. But so Tomlin said, this organization has a huge part of my life for many years, and it's been an absolute honor to lead this team. I'm deeply grateful to Art Rooney II and the late Ambassador Rooney for their trust and support. I'm also thankful for the players who gave everything they had every day, and to the coaches and staff and commitment and dedication made the journey so meaningful. And he goes on thanking their fan base, Steelers Nation, because everybody isn't a fan base anymore. Every team has a nation, or the Chiefs are a kingdom. You know, it's a fan base, okay? But he had 2 years left on his contract. So what the interesting thing is here, first of all, he's only 53 years old. And you don't realize that because he's been in the league 19 years. Because he's here, because he's only 53 years old, he could take 1 gap year or even 2 gap years and hop back in. But they do have, teams would have to get permission for Mike Tomlin to just interview for the job, not just coach, but just to talk to him. And from what I was seeing here earlier tonight, when I was going through Instagram and all this stuff, always looking for something to talk about, now, I think he did say that he's not going to coach this year, which, you know, you do the same thing for 19 years. You know, you want to take a little bit of a break. You know, you want to take a year off because, you know, because also think about this. The fact that you're already, because you lost in the first round of the playoffs, you're a week behind at least for some of these coaches who are going for these head coaching positions. Now, granted, the coaches know the organizations know your reputation and stuff, but in a way, it's a little unfair to go and interview for a job, and all of a sudden, you know, and one of the first questions would be, well, what did you feel like you did wrong that your team just couldn't get over the top or even just win a playoff game? You know, sometimes it's good to decompress, whether it's a long day after work or leaving a job after X amount of years. Even in my case, I call it detoxing. You do have to figure out what your next step is, and you know, technically you do have 2 years about it. So the Steelers retain his coaching rights and could negotiate compensation if he returns to the NFL before the end of the 2027 season, which basically means, let's say, for example, let's say the pattern with the Eagles of wild card loss, Super Bowl, wild card loss, Super Bowl, wild card loss, Super Bowl doesn't happen next year. And let's say the Eagles just don't make the playoffs at all. And let's say the Eagles do fire Nick Sirianni. Neither phone went off. Pittsburgh has the right to ask for some sort of compensation. And at the very least, you have to ask for permission to talk to him because they own his rights. So that complicates things a little bit if you really wanted a guy like him. But, you know, do you want a coach that's lost 7 games in a row? 6 years in a row, he's lost in the first playoff game. And the last time he won a playoff game, which was where was it? He last won in 2016, an 18-16 win over the Kansas City Chiefs. Since 2016, they've lost 7 in a row, tying Marvin Lewis. 6 straight times he made the playoffs and did not advance, which is, I believe, a record. So, and this was the year where they got off to the quick start yet again, and they went belly up. They started off 4-1. They had a two-game lead in the division. Now, granted, they still won the division because the Ravens kicker decided to slice the last kick. But they did have significant injuries as well. Who doesn't have significant injuries at any point in the year, especially in a sport like football? But they had a rocky stretch where they lost to the Bengals. They got blown out by the Chargers and the Bills. But they had an upset win over the Colts. But you know, the fans started to get more involved and fire Tomlin. The same way that everybody was like fire Patullo here in Philly. They ended up after that loss to the Bills, where they were really voicing their displeasure with Tomlin. He won 3 games in a row. But he never made it back to the Super Bowl after he fell to Aaron Rodgers' Green Bay Packers. And you know, but he's had 5 different starting quarterbacks over the last 5 years, which could be attributed to everything. Now here's a record. The Steelers also became the first team in NFL history to lose 5 straight playoff games by double digits. You almost broke it. You were down 7-6 at the start of the fourth quarter before all the hell broke loose. 9 seasons without a playoff win marks the Steelers' longest postseason winless streak in the Super Bowl era. Crazy stuff. Now, Mike Tomlin was the youngest head coach at the time to win the Super Bowl when he defeated Arizona. He was 36 years old, but he got surpassed by Sean McVay, who was a younger 36 when the Rams won the Super Bowl in 2022. And why do I mention Sean McVay? Because when the Rams advanced this weekend, with the Eagles losing to the 49ers, the reseeding in the NFC led to the Rams playing the Bears. And this will be his 15th playoff game in his career. And this is a crazy, crazy stat here. He has been a part of 15 playoff games. He has never faced a team twice. He has faced 13 of the other 15 teams in the NFC. And he has faced the Patriots and the Bengals in the Super Bowl. Now, if he ends up advancing to the NFC Championship game, this streak gets broken because he will either have to take the Rams up to Seattle or host the 49ers. I mean, that is a crazy stat that this is his 15th career playoff game, and he has not faced the same team twice. So, crazy stuff there. So, the only two teams that they haven't faced, and somebody mentioned this in the comments here, the only two teams he hasn't faced in the playoffs in the NFC, obviously other than his own team, are the Giants and the Commies. Other than that, he's faced every team in the NFC. And he's faced two teams in the AFC, but he's never faced them twice yet. That is a crazy stat that you can really get into. Now, one thing that I do know is that SoFi Stadium used to be Hollywood Park Racetrack, where, especially on Friday nights, I'd watch those races until like 1:30 in the morning, betting on the horses. But you won't have to wait till 1:30 in the morning or 10 p.m. 10 p.m. Eastern time start. But 10 a.m. Eastern is when I have also eligible. And we're going to look at the fairgrounds this weekend. That's guaranteed because they got a Kentucky Oaks prep. They got a Kentucky Derby prep. And who knows what else we'll get into. But we're going to look on the stakes card at the fairgrounds. They have 6 different races. They have the Lecomte for the boys, and they have the Silver Bullet Day for the girls. Let me just check one thing here. Lecomte, Bradley. Hi. All right. I have to give the fairgrounds one of those. You had one job. You had one fucking job. You could have put the 6 stakes races from races 8 to 13. You have a pick 6 wager, which is a jackpot wager. You could have put all 6 races there and had it as the an all stakes pick 6. But no. We're going to have race 7 and then 9 through 13. But you have an all stakes pick 5. But you could have had an all stakes pick 6, but whatever. So a little bitching and moaning by yours truly. So But I'm sure many of you that are out there watching didn't realize that SoFi is on the grounds of the old Hollywood Park racetrack. And the Bears, if they ever make up their mind, they own the land to Arlington Park now outside Chicago, but now they're trying to get into Indiana instead. But, you know, but some goofy stuff that you can see there. I heard a noise. So, so I got one last story here. This is going to be a shorter show tonight. Now, the Phillies were talking to Bo Bichette, but and the Phillies are favored to sign him, but you know, I'm waiting to see with that because, you know, even though the owner will approve the spending of more money going further into the luxury tax. The New York Mets have also tried to get into the spending money like drunken sailors or whatever the correct terminology is. And that's because Kyle Tucker has been offered a short-term deal by the New York Mets that is believed to be worth $50 million a season. 50, not 15, 50. Or, as I named my TV, Fiddy. F-I-D-D-Y. $50 million a year for short term. Now he turned 29 last Saturday. He's continuing to field offers. He declined a $22.025 million qualifying offer from the Cubs. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm checking this as well. Okay, so Kyle Tucker is not represented by Scott Boras. And neither is Bo Bichette. I just think sometimes players slip through the cracks. And this is more about Kyle Tucker than it's Bo Bichette, but it was a little thought I had there where I was thinking, both of these players are still around. And if you remember from a couple of years ago, and we can go as far back as Bryce Harper signing with the Phillies. And by the way, you know, the news from Bryce Harper world is that he did re-up with Under Armour within the last 24, 48 hours. He said he was a free agent, but they re-upped his contract. So, but I checked that because Bryce Harper didn't sign until February 28th, I believe, or 29th. 28th. It wasn't the 29th because it wasn't a leap year. So you do have a lot of times these Scott Boras agents, they sign later because Scott Boras is trying to get every nickel and dime out of these teams for his players. Well, Scott Boras, I think the one thing you should really do, because you're the reason why Major League Baseball has a draft lottery, which is ineffective, I think you should mention the words promotion and relegation, but that's just me. But because one question I had even just now is, wait a second, is Kyle Tucker represented by Scott Boras? Because, Scott Boras has this history of his players signing late. Like, for example, one year, Blake Snell signed up real late with the Giants, and he got hurt, if you remember, if I'm recollecting properly. You can only do, spring training is there for a reason, but, I think, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. It could have slipped through the cracks. It could have been negotiating the whole time. Who knows? But the Mets want to pay him an average of $50 million a year on a short-term contract. But maybe one of the reasons why he is being offered a shorter-term contract by the Mets, other than money, and we don't know where baseball will be in 2027, salary cap or anything like that. Tucker did have a bunch of injuries last year. Or the last 2 years, I should say. He had a fractured ham and a calf strain that suppressed the second half numbers with the Cubs last year. But I don't know if you'd consider this analytics or it's just, just something that they throw in here. Tucker and Juan Soto, who could be his teammate if he goes to the Mets, are the only hitters with a 1-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio while compiling a slugging percentage above 500. Those are the only two. Tucker was great in the first half of last season. 280, 17 home runs while being named an All-Star. But he ended up only hitting 22 home runs and knocking in 73 runs for the season in 136 games. But after returning from his hand injury, Tucker only hit 218 in July and 244 in August. So maybe he came back too soon. Who knows? But whatever it is, maybe some teams are a little worried about him being injury prone. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But whatever it is, Kyle Tucker also is getting an offer also has an offer from the Blue Jays. I believe that one is more of a long-term deal. I don't see here. But Kyle Tucker is still out there. Now the Blue Jays did host Tucker at their minor league facility in Dunedin in December. And the Dodgers have also talked to him as well, who always seem to be trying to see if we can get $1 billion payroll, literally. But, so I don't know what exactly the Toronto Blue Jays are offering, but they do say that the Mets are offering a short-term contract, which may be 2 years, maybe 3 years. All depends how you define it. But, it's but it will be interesting to see what happens here, because I know in my case, I want Kyle Tucker to be in the American League again. I want to see the Mets wallow in their own filth, because Mets fans, we don't like them here in Philly. They don't like us up there in New York. Let's just say the feeling is mutual. But yeah, I do. I do. Somebody didn't convert you to a Yankees fan. So I'm just looking here for a second. Let me see something here. I do want to see one thing. I do want to see something here. And I apologize. I know this is great. All right. So you know what? I am going to Unless somebody has anything that they want to add to this show real quick. I do feel like I owe Brendan a raid back to him because he raided me yesterday and I totally whiffed on that. So I think I owe him a return raid here. He's playing NHL 23. At least I think he is. And you know, so what we are going to do, we're going to return the favor. We're going to raid him. And I will be back Thursday at 9 o'clock. Hopefully we'll have more news to talk about here. Maybe we have a new head coach somewhere or anything like that. But we are going to raid Brendan. And he's playing hockey. And maybe somebody will be putting on the foil and whatever. So do appreciate each and every one of yous. Let's do it live Thursday night at 9 o'clock. And also join me Saturday for Also Eligible if you can't make it on Thursday. So do hope everybody has a great night. And I'll see you guys in the winner's circle. Have a great night, everybody.